Hello there. Question: how can one tyrant condemn the actions of another? Our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who with other Western leaders is engaged in supplying arms to the people of Ukraine to fight a proxy war against Putin for us, is today hosting the Canadian PM Justin Trudeau. The Canadian PM who misused his country's laws to trash the human rights of his own people. And he's getting together with Boris so they can discuss how to deal with Putin's Russia-Ukrainian war. With Trudeau denouncing, in the strongest possible terms, Russia's egregious attack on Ukraine. So instead of berating and sanctioning Trudeau for his persecution of the truckers and their supporters, we're going to be feting him and asking for his advice. And Trudeau is tanking in the Canadian popularity polls right now, and this will rub off on us and tarnish our reputation over there. But I suppose on balance, our establishment views Trudeau's shortcomings as better than Vladimir Putin's shortcomings. And I suppose most people would agree with that. And that's the problem with all of this. No one is squeaky clean. Absolutely no one. And in international politics, we end up working with the least worse option. And look at our own shortcomings in the form of Blair and Cameron and their involvement in conflicts that saw the innocent suffer. Always it is the mantra that bombing them will make us safer over here. And all that cozying up to the likes of Bush and Obama as they went around the globe unleashing their armaments. All in the name of the greater good and democracy, of course. Iraq, Libya and Syria spring to mind. None of us come out of those anything other than stained in the blood of the innocent. In the West, we vote them in as a collective, and our politicians then do as they are instructed by the puppet masters, not what the people want them to do. We have evil on all sides, with the most overt expression of evil coming today from Vladimir Putin. Yet disappointingly, I read in the comments on social media and in reply to my videos that some of you support a man who would use cluster and vacuum bombs on children. To some, Putin is a hero, and I can more than see the appeal of a man who seems to stand against the cancer of our liberal woke society. But in the light of the atrocities being carried out in his name and under his orders, as well as his open threat to incinerate the planet with nukes if we don't do as he orders, that's where any Putin appeal ends for me. Then there's the timing of all this, coming on the back of a pandemic turned common cold. All far too convenient as we go swiftly from one chapter of trauma to yet another. From one episode of keeping the population of the planet panicked right into another. Especially when you consider how terrified of the pandemic Putin is and how much he pushes his country's Sputnik jibby thing. Oh yes he does. He was well invested in all of that. As well invested as all those leaders in the West and Southern Hemisphere were and still are. But for now at least, the scientific experts have been shown the Cobra briefing room back door. But the military experts have been marched in to replace them, and the fear pressure continues. Anyway, just this afternoon Putin's forces were engaged in targeting civilians, trying to leave a war-torn city and sheltering under a bridge. And no amount of claiming that this is justified because of the US and UK have done such things in the past can excuse these acts. And I'll take you back to the Second World War, when to defeat Germany, both President Roosevelt of the US and the UK Prime Minister Winston Churchill grasped Stalin's bloody claw and shook his hand on a military alliance. History is littered with leaders making choices of this sort, and Stalin himself engaged in using brutal population relocation to try and Sovietize, or more probably Russianize, his whole area of control, the Soviet Union, arguably stoking the sort of thing we see in Ukraine today. And all we see out of all of this is yet more conflict. But having seen the Russian forces in action, it has shown itself to be nowhere near the all-conquering military machine we'd been led to expect. In fact, I would estimate that were NATO and Russia to go head-to-head on purely conventional military terms, Russia would be ejected from Ukraine in very short order. So the only thing keeping Putin in Ukraine is the Russian nuclear inventory, and his threat to use them on us should we try to intervene in his empire building. And it is that nuclear threat that will prevent any military intervention by the West, prevent any no-fly zone, and prevent any peacekeeping operations. His entire strategy is to rely on that nuclear threat. It's all he has. But if Putin gets his way and takes Ukraine, he will undoubtedly have fake elections followed by show trials and will put a lot of people up against the wall to send his brutal message. These are not the actions of someone to be admired. But then again, are the recent actions of any government leader out there as pure as the driven snow and to be admired? Vladimir Putin is an enemy, but not the only enemy. He is one of many enemies of ordinary humanity that have waged war on our minds, bodies and souls. But why do so many of our enemies always turn out to be our very own leaders?